Good morning everyone. Today we will be learning API versioning in .NET Core. So what is API versioning? API versioning is a practice of managing and exposing multiple versions of API so that the new change can be introduced without breaking that existing client. Think of it as a keeping multiple edition of a book, like new reader get the updated version, the new version, existing reader that have the old version still refer the old version without any confusion. So similarity API versioning ensure that existing client continue to work without code change, new customer get improved API feature, backend evolve safely over the time. Now the next question is why why we need API versioning. So backward compatibility. Different user might be using different version of your app. A change in your API should not break the old client. Second is control routing of the features. Like new feature or breaking changes can be rolled out only to specific consumer or environment. Minimize the business risk. Not all consumer upgrade immediately. So versioning reduce downtime and failed integration. Stability for public APIs. Public facing API like payment gateway, travel portal, government API must be stable for many years. Next thing is versioning model. So before that we do that, but when you should decide that you need to have the version of your API. So there are few indication, like you change the response structure, like you change the rename the property, you remove it, you removed a field, you change the data type of any field in the response, you change the request structure, like you add a new parameter in the request and which is mandatory, you modify business logic, you modify URL, routing, authentication or protocol, or you introduce breaking changes affecting your old client. So next thing we will do, like what are the various type of versioning. So URL path versioning, query string versioning, header versioning and media type versioning. What is the now we will look through the URL path versioning. For example, like URL indicate that API slash v1 slash product, where v1 tell that it's version fast. So prawns of this like benefit of the URL versioning is easiest for the client to understand, like from the URL itself client will able to see that which version they've been using, v1, v2, v3. Clear separation of the version and convenient routing and documentation, it's very easy. But there are some drawback, like version appear in the URL like v1, v2, v3, and some consider that it's the URL is not restful, so that's the only thing. But this is that URL versioning is a like 90% of the cases most of the developer use the URL versioning. Next is query string versioning, like we are sending that API version into the query string, like API slash version 1.0. So benefit of using this query string versioning, non-institutive changes, easy to implement, but there are some drawback, like it's while you need to pass that the version, the URL doesn't look too good and hard to catch, the URL hard to catch in some of the proxy services. Third is header based versioning, like X hyphen version 1.0, the client will be sending that version into that request header. So benefit of this sending the version into the request header is clean and restful, good for enterprise API, but there are at the same time there are some drawback, like harder for the browser to test, because you really need to write the code or send the request through that uh, any client, and required client to manage header, like along with the request, client has to send the request header as well. Fourth is media type versioning. Like while we send that request, we mention the content type application / JSON. At the same time, we can mention v is equal to 1.0, which is a version number. So benefit of this approach, like very flexible, ideal for API required advanced control, but at the same time there are some drawback. Most complex option, hard to maintain. So next thing is like we will see that by real example. So for that, let me create a real project, go to that, and let's say ASP.NET Core API. So this is the project we will be creating to explain the version in the more detail. And let's say multi version API, and I created the project. Okay, while we create the project, by default it create a class and it create a controller weather forecast, which is a default one. So we can go ahead and delete this and I can delete this as well. Now I'm adding a controller. Let's say I'm adding new item. Here I need to add API controller empty, and I can name it customer. Okay, and the routing it shows by default API /. So what I need to do it, I need to mention that. Okay, we will go from there. So the first thing I need to add that package, NuGet package. I can go that and API ASP dot version. I can search that. So ASP dot versioning. Let me go back and see the package. I still have some confusion around it. Give me a minute. I just need to verify the package to be 100% sure. Okay, API dot version. Okay. ASP dot versioning dot version, and this is the package which I need to add the reference. Okay, I installed it. Second is API versioning and MVC API Explorer. That the another package I need to add it. So far so good. Okay, now on top of that I need to mention API controller. Okay, let me add a method like http get and public ixn, and let me customer1 . customer 2. Okay, so here in the routing I can add that API, and there I can add the controller customer. Okay, and here I can add API version slash, let me go back, sorry, my bad, I just missed that, and in the URL version dot API version. Here I can mention that version and API version, and the top I can mention API version 1.0. Okay, now so far so good. Okay, I can mention that route and its get customer, and customer 1 and customer 2. Now I need to modify that program.cs as well, and I need to remove this one, or like we can keep that one, and I need to add builder.services dot add API versioning, and I need to pass some parameter. Before that I need to use using ASP dot versioning and ASP using ASP versioning dot API Explorer. Okay, now what I need to do is API version, let me do it from builder dot app API, and I mentioned that. Okay, in option I said option default API version is new API version, and I mentioned that it should be 1. It's a major one and it's a minor one. Option dot assume default version when unspecified true, mean like if the customer won't specified that version into the URL like v1 v2 v3, then it will consider that default version and report API version true. And here I need to add API Explorer, v equal to add API Explorer. Okay, and I need to give that add API Explorer and v dot group name format, like it the URL start with v and next to it should be the version, and substitute API URL in that URL. Another thing is I need to create the dependency for that Swagger as well. So the first thing, like I need to add that builder dot services dot add transient, and I need to API version provider and a default. I need to add transient for API version description provider, and I mentioned that default API version. Then here I need to modify as of today, like it's using app.use swagger API. Now I need to pass that. I need to override it, and so here what I'm doing, that I'm giving the provide, I'm getting the object of the provider using API version service provider, and that is where I add that dependency of that here on the line number 14. Okay, and from there, like I'm iterating that each description, the API version description, and I added that swagger, and this is like where v1 v2 v3 the version. Okay, now let me do that. Let me build it and show you. Okay, now I can see that. Okay, if I say try, now you can see that the URL, it is showing that v1 means version 1, and we are getting that response. What if, like here we are only returning two information, the ID and the customer. Like if we need to add more information, then we can go there and let me create a new more controller. I go there and let's say add and new item and API controller and customer v2, which means version 2. Okay, and here the route will change from, routing will be exactly the same that what it was earlier, customer, but here there will be one change. Here we are explicitly mentioned API version 2.0. okay, and let me add the same method. Okay, get customer. Okay, and here let me say a account number, and let's say okay, just for testing purpose what we did, and account number 8. Okay, now let me rebuild it. So the last time I showed you that if you are hitting this URL, you are getting response from the version 1, and if I change the URL mentioning that version, not I'm looking for version 2, then see, you start getting one more field, account number. So this is how we do that, so that the old customer, the time they haven't changed their code, they keep using that older version, and the new customer will get the new version. Yeah, that was it. Thank you for your viewing this tutorial. Thank you.